Hello, good afternoon. How are you? My name is Abdel Jacobo. I'm the academic specialist for the University of Dayton Publishing in Mexico. And well, today it is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. So you can see me because today we changed the formats a little bit. I'm going to explain in a moment what changes you're going to see. But I want to take a moment to thank all the people from all the countries that you have been with us since the very first day. Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Spain, United States, and of course, Mexico. We really, really appreciate you to be here and learn with us. And today, I said that we changed the format a little bit because we're going to have an interview, an academic interview with one of our specialists. I'm going to introduce her in a moment. And our topic today is experiential learning. So we are going to have a very interesting topic, very interesting information. I'm going to be the moderator. I'm going to direct the questions to our expert. And we really, really expect as well your participation. We expect you to participate on the chat, all the questions you have, all comments you might have about this very interesting topic. Feel free and welcome to do it through the chat. All right, so I'm going to introduce our specialist, Maru. Well, actually, she's Maria Eugenia, but we call her Maru. So if it's okay with you, Maru, to call you like that. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge on this topic. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your experience? Who are you?
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. Thank you to be here. Having this talking about education, about experiential learning. Well, I've been teaching for 40 years. I have worked with students of all academic levels, little kids of maternal, kindergarten, kids, primary school, secondary school, high school, college, and master's level. My teaching consists in classes to the pedagogical and psychology students of college level, where I work subjects that are connected to philosophy, education, evaluation, didactic, educative models, and learning process. I'm also teaching of literature with teenagers of high school, and I also work as a human facilitator developer. That's what I am.
Thank you, Maru. We really appreciate you because we understand this is a very interesting topic and you have thought this topic at different levels, even in English and Spanish. And we want to thank you because you are willing to discuss this topic in English with all our fellow teachers, language teachers, English teachers, content teachers who are out there. And something that we saw through the last days is that we have a lot of teachers from kindergarten, preschool, elementary schools, and they have a lot of questions, especially through these times in which they are suffering, working, and looking for options to work online. And all the topics offer different information for all levels. But since you are an expert on preschool and little kids, children, elementary, we're going to try to adapt the content and information to all levels. But this is something that all teachers requested. How can we apply content or new topics regarding to children? So I think this is going to be a very interesting topic. Okay, can you tell us, please, Maru, what we're going to see? What do we expect on today's talk?
Okay, we are going to talk about Kolb's learning cycle. Then we are going to the theory of the experiential learning, Kolb's 6 principles of learning, the learning process, and we are going to have 2 instruments that are going to help the teachers. The first one is the test, They are going to test the educator role profile, and also they are going to have, especially for the teachers of secondary school and high school, the Kolb's learning inventory, where they can know what kind of learning or style of learning do the students have.
Very nice, Maru. It seems that we're going to have very interesting information. And I understand, and you told me before, that there are other people who actually talk about experiential learning. There are several authors who have worked with experiential learning, but we're going to focus on one specific author. Isn't it right?
Yes, we are going to be talking about Kolb, David Kolb, and these ideas that Kolb created was supported by the theory of John Dewey, the theory of learning in which the other creates personal learning, Jean Piaget and his model on cognitive learning at its 4 stages, and Kurt Lewin. He talks about the change theory, and it's divided in 3 steps to create new behaviors in the learning process of learning. These are the 3 theories that authors that create some questions to David Kolb, and then upon that he starts studying these theories, Dewey, Lewin, Lev Vygotsky also, and Piaget, and with that ideas he create this learning cycle called learning.
Right, and saying that, I also had to make a clarification here. I had to make an observation. We as teachers, we were discussing earlier, Maru and I, about how important it is for us to, as teachers, to actually increase our knowledge about theory and read more about authors, and to expand our teaching strategies. So we consider, even so, we are going to talk about a lot of theory, about ideas, approaches, and methodology regarding experiential learning. What we're going to try to do is, because Maru is a well-experienced teacher, and I really want to thank you again, Maru, for the effort to having this conversation in English. But you are a very well-experienced teacher working with children on preschool and elementary. So all the comments that I've been reading on the chat are about this topic is going to be very interesting for them. So don't be afraid that even so we're going to talk about theory. At the end, we're going to offer the strategies, and through Maru's experience, we're going to offer ideas in order that even so you work right now online or when you go back to school, to have a different approach of teaching. Because we as language teachers, sometimes we get married with one approach. Sometimes we teach grammar, or we think about communicative approach, but there are options, and this is an option we want to offer. So saying that, let's move on to our reflection. So what do you think, Maru, if we give him the opportunity to read the ideas there? Okay, we have 3 ideas. Students get very nervous in English class and say English is impossible. That's one idea. Students talk to each other all the time about things not related to the class. They always copying from other classmates' workbooks. And finally, students are able to take turns and read a text out loud, but cannot answer the comprehension questions the teacher asks. So we're going to give you some time to think about these ideas, and please write it on the chat if you agree or disagree, or this sounds very familiar to you. In meantime, they are writing. Maru, can you expand maybe on one of the ideas on the reflections we are seeing on the screen?
Yes, of course. For example, the number 1. It's necessary the teachers create an affective and emotional environment to give the students the opportunity to learn by communicating his ideas. No matter they have mistakes, because they are part of the learning process. So the creation of the environment for that the teacher gives the opportunity to the students to be in kind, to feel in a kind environment. It's very necessary, especially when we are talking about learning a new language.
That's right, Maru. And let me read some of the comments, so maybe we can expand a little bit about these ideas. Anonymous says, we are preschool teachers here. One of them, we had to take an advantage of her knowledge. Okay, so they're talking about your knowledge. Please also mention some examples related to the area. I think we said it before. We're going to try to relate it for kindergarten, preschool teachers, and also elementary schools. And let me see, we have no comments about the ideas here, but those ideas are actually comments we took from different teachers at different levels, and those are problems we identify, right? And we wanted to share with you, because we are going to try to offer a solution, or maybe not a solution, but some ideas or strategies to deal with those problems. We have a comment here from Nefti in Spain. She said, as teachers, we had to inspire students to love English as much as we do, or even better. That is related to the idea number one. This term, I have been training some old students to become teachers at my school, and that makes me feel so proud of what I do every day. Oh, that's very good. What do you think, Maru? So she's training teachers. So you think this topic is going to be also beneficial for teacher trainers?
Yes, of course. One of the important that the ideas, of course, is it depends on a student's motivation to learn. So we need to cap the intention of the student to be in the class, and we need to motivate him by his internal motivation and the creation of the environment of the teacher. That is the external motivation. How do the teacher prepares his classes so he can involve the student and motivate the students to be in the class. That's very, very important. So the students can be actively involved in their own processing learning.
That's right. We have another comment, so let's read this last comment from the ideas on the screen so we can move on. Let me see. Anonymous says, case one, teacher must behave in a way students find friendly. That's why it is very important to know what they like or what they do and do on an everyday basis. For example, if your young students like a topic, I think I might base the class on questions related to the topic. Why not I might play the game beforehand? All right, so he's telling us that this is something we have to do on an everyday basis, and we can have different approaches in order to discuss about the students copying all the time, about students being demotivated, or students that then don't understand what the teacher is saying. And the last comment, I had to stop asking my students to answer the workbook as homework since I saw many of them copying the answers before class. I work in class. All right, those are very interesting topic, Maru. So yes. we are going to offer some first, like I said, some theory about experiential learning. But just remember that this approach, maybe you want to expand a little bit about also, Maru, that this approach is not only focused on language.
Yes, of course. This approach can be used in any kind of subject in the class, mathematics, science, Spanish classes, biology, history. So we can work with this theory in all the subjects in a class. And I'm going to give some different examples about it.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to continue posting your comments on the chat so everyone can see it, read, and we can also get feedback from each other. We are a group of teachers and we really expect collaborative work. Someone were asking my name. My name is Abdel Jacobo, so I'm going to write it on the chat. And our speaker is Maru Olage. She has a lot of experience teaching children and providing coaching for teachers at different levels, and she's an expert on experiential learning. So let's move on. And then we have here a quote from Cole that it says, "Learning is a process of creating knowledge by the transformation of experience." So let me read it again. Learning is a process of creating knowledge by the transformation of experience. Maru, can you expand a little bit about this idea?
Yes, of course. Cole said that learning is an holistic process of adaptation to the world. I'm going to give an example since little kids until teenagers. For example, if we want to talk about the water, with a little kid, if you ask, what's the water? And he's going to answer, it's something that I can play with. I can wet, I can drink. But when you do the same question to a kid from primary school, he's able to learn the concept of water cycle. And now his mind is prepared to distinguish between evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. And now you can ask questions like, do you know where can we find water? And they will answer, oh yes, in rivers, oceans, in the sea, in lakes, okay? So we prepare the mind of the little kid or the kid of primary school to know and to learn a concept that is the water cycle. After he finishes primary school, now his mind is prepared to learn a different concept of the water. And in this stage of his life, he's prepared to learn the water formula, and not only to learn the water formula, to have a comprehension between these two elements that form part of the water formula, no? The hydrogen and the oxygen. Two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen is the formula of the water. This is how we are always increasing our opportunity to learn something about one topic. And according as we are in a new level, not only in a new level according to our academic studies, a new level in our cognitive process also, as Piaget said.
That's right, and I don't know if this happened to you before, Maru, but I actually, before all this thing about being at home, I was in a school teaching these subjects, and one of the very important questions that I usually have when I am teaching this workshop is, how can we create experiences in the classroom? Because sometimes we have limited time, sometimes we don't have materials, sometimes we don't have let's say a very clear program or a content book in which I can create experiences. But I understand what you say. It's if we create the opportunity that children rational think and live how water is composed, then learning will be more meaningful. Before we move ahead, it's a recommendation for teachers regarding about what to do with limited time or finding difficulties in creating experiences in the classroom. What recommendations you can give with teachers before we move ahead?
Well, they can work with objects that are common in their houses. For example, to explain this, the cycle of the water, what I took to the classroom is one bowl where I can put some water and they can see the evaporation. So they need to be practical. And the teachers are very creative, and what they can do is to take the elements that they have near of them. For example, if they want to explain the animals of the farm, for example, they can take photos about the animals and take to the class and interact with the children and ask them if they know these animals, where did they know them, etc., etc.
Maro, I understand you have some pictures to show us, right, regarding this topic. Do you want to show them right now, or are you waiting for later?
I'm waiting for later.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a piece of an advance that we're gonna see today. But then we're gonna go now into theory. But remember that the main idea of the experiential learning is that knowledge or learning happens when we create experiences. That's what we're gonna see. So let's get a little bit deeper on theory, and let's talk about this cycle, the learning cycle. So Maru, you're an expert, so please tell us, what is this about?
Okay, the learning cycle talks about 4 stages. The first one is concrete. Take the students to a concrete experience. After we create the environment of a concrete experience in the classroom, we are going to provoke the internal processing in the student. And when this match, the output and the input process of the student, what we are going to provoke, asking question to the student, is to create the abstract conceptualization of the content or the topic that we are talking about with the student. And this is very important because the teachers most realize that this is different in each student. We are not going to have the same responses in the classroom. So what we are going to have is the opportunity that all the students can listen the ideas of their classmates and think in different, no? Oh, I didn't have this idea. Oh, this is very interesting. What? I didn't think like this. And so we create the atmosphere that in the environment of the classroom, they can learn listening to their classmates, paying attention to the teacher questions, and then they have the active experimentation. No, we finally have the active experimentation with the students. Here we are going also to see forward in the presentation that we have to connect the concrete experience with the abstract conceptualization, and then we are going to connect the internal processing with the active experimentation. So we have another 2 ideas about this also learning cycle.
So let me have it clear. I remember this particular school in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, Mexico, when I was teaching like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I remember that I have a model about the body. No, they want the body. They had the body parts, and they had this beautiful model. So let's say that the concrete experience, it's asking the kid to reflect about the body, how it works, the organs, the internal organs, and the functions we have in the system, and then they process the information. That's internal processing stage. Because when they process, and it gets more meaningful because they had to build the model. They have to actually, design it. They had to cut it. They had to color it. And once they are doing the process and making internal, then they learn the abstract concepts, right? How the heart works, how the lungs work, and they start developing the knowledge, because the idea on the last stage is that they take the knowledge of the learning outside the classroom as an active experimentation. That it means that at the end of the day, what we want as teachers, they have to apply that knowledge on real life situations. So how we apply these body concepts of this body ideas, how it works. I mean, the body, the functions of the body. Well, when you go to a doctor, for example, you have to explain a doctor the pain you have, or how do you feel, and you have an idea. The doctor explains back about the body, right? What's happening in your body. That's an example. And we understand that we have a lot of language teachers. How can we apply to language teachers have a concrete experience in the classroom? So we as language English teachers can apply this idea of the cycle in our classrooms.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3 examples that they can apply in the classroom. They also do, but they didn't know that this is experiential learning. Okay, for example, they can play role plays. Okay, for example, a tourist is speaking with a local, and this gives the opportunity, the student, the opportunity to practice questions, giving directions, location, practicing preposition. This is one role play. I'm a tourist speaking with a local because I'm visiting one country. Another example also about role playing is to be a mother with a child, or brothers and sisters. Here they can practice morals like should, must have to, don't have to. And also we can create a reading environment and give a living lecture to create the opportunity to the students to express their ideas about it. Okay, so what we are doing with the lecture or the reading is provide the students information about a specific topic. For example, animals disappearance. Ask the students some questions about it. Okay, if we follow to the next slide, we are going to have these questions. Abdel? Okay, so what just happened? How did it make me feel? What did I learn from it? And what can I do with it? These are 4 questions that create the environment to work with experiential learning. No? The students have the topic of the reading, and they can explain what happened with the animals and how does it make they feel, etc., etc. No, as they have here the questions. So we create a communicative approach so the students can express their ideas about this. And we also can ask the teachers, Abdel, what other topics they can talk about with the students according with the ages of them.
Perfect. So we expect your comments, teachers. Please write on the chat box what other topics you have used to create a concrete experience in your classroom. We talk about different ones, reading processes, talking about human body parts. We talk about vocabulary, different ideas. Meantime, the people it's writing on the chat because it takes time to see the comments. We have here a question from Daniela Maru. Daniela says, those are very good examples, but can you give us other examples to understand in a better way how to apply each stage in a real class? So a very concrete example of how we apply every stage. Do you want to answer that, Maru?
Yes, of course. For example, if you are in the here I'm going to have an example for the teachers of preschool. Okay, if the experiential concrete experience, the first one is when they are learning the numbers. For example, what we need to work with them is to have different objects for the students to be working with. For example, this little animal, hello, hello. And what we are going to work with them is the numbers. No, here we have an animal, we have this animal, we have also this animal, for example, and what they are going to learn is the number one. Okay, it happens to my students in psychology because they were modeling a class for little kids, and they were explaining the numbers, and this was very nice because they think that the little kids can learn all the numbers at the same time. And I say to them, no, this is not possible for little kids. What we need to do is to work number by number with the little kids, practicing with different materials so we can work motor skills. And then we have the concept. For example, the parents come to the class and say, oh, teacher, oh, miss, my little kid knows the numbers. Oh, perfect, that's Georgius, I said, for example. And what we know as a teachers of preschool students, that learning the number is a process. So we need to practice with them. First, we show, for example, objects, and we say, how many mammoths do you see? One. How many teddy bears you see? And they say, I see one. Hello. How many dragons do you see? And they say, one. How many angels do you see? One. What they are connected, the idea here, what we are connected is that they can touch the elements, they can see the elements, and then after that, what they are going to see is to create is an internal processing. But then after that, what we are going to do is to present the symbol that represent that number. And we know that the symbol is the number one. Okay, so this is one difference because this symbol represents the number, and this object represents the connection between the symbol and the object, the number of objects that can connect with this symbol. And we do the same with the number two. They first know to count objects, different objects, and then we present the number two to create the internal processing. After that, they can have the abstract conceptualization, and they can connect the number with the number, the symbol with the number of objects that they are learning. I don't know if this is clear.
Yeah, it is very clear, Maru, and it seems you have a lot of experience. I mean, for me, it's quite hard to teach children. I'm not just used to it, and I never thought about that. I want to take a moment to read all comments. We have a lot of comments and ideas, and I'm very interested in sharing the comments with you, because you can also get ideas not only from Maru, not only from this talk, but from other teachers as well, all around the globe. That's an advantage we had today. We have teachers from all around the world. So Nepti from Spain, she said, at my school, we take the students out to experience the language. If we're dealing with food, take them to the supermarket. If we do a tour around the supermarket, make them talk in English, and then walk around different areas, and of course shop the food, and then they can prepare on a delicious salad in the classroom. Very good. Anonymous says the butterfly cycle, so I guess he's using this cycle to children in order to explain the experiential learning. Anonymous says, I have used bingo to make them sensitive to these kind of topics. Letty from Ecuador, she said, I asked the students to create a space shuttle with recycled materials, and then we start to talk about the trip to the space and the planets. They love it so much, and it was easy for them to write about a fantastic trip to any planet and why. Claudia says, I was teaching about the past progressive, and then we pretended we had lost the teacher's book, and then we made a trial. Everyone hold flashcards to answer, and then explain why the book disappeared. At the end, we found the book that the teacher forgot at home. So they had to write an evaluation and ask questions in past progressive. Stuffy animals can be used as well as teacher's assistants, building up dialogues with the stuffy animals, making different voices, toys, supervisors. Meantime, I working on my worksheets. Video, songs, movement, you mentioned about TPR, also movement. Stories also about Pompeii and the volcano, reflection, questions. We have a lot of comments that I'm going to start posting on the chat, so feel free, take notes about the ideas, and maybe you can have different lessons using this approach, experiential learning, that maybe you want to use later when we go back to our regular classes, or eventually you can start working with your kids online. But those are very good comments and very good ideas, strategies that I'm going to share on the box chat, so we can all learn from each other. All right, Maru. So do you agree we continue?
Yes, of course. And I think all the ideas of the teachers were fantastic, because one of the strategies that we can use are the simulation environment. This simulation environment helps the student to have an active experimentation. That's great.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on about another concept, right? So, Maru,
yes, here. Thank you. Here is where I told you before, when we connect between the 4 stages of the learning theory cycle. So we connect concrete experience with abstract conceptualization. After that, with the reflective observation that we provoke in the student, asking for some of the characteristics of the story, of the object, of the activity that we are doing. They connect with the active experimentation, transforming their learning process in something that is practical for them. And I'm going to give you an example, very nice example of what happened to the little kids when they are creating abstract conceptualization. William James, before I tell you this, let me tell you this. William James said that perception exists in the here and now. When we work with concrete experience, what we are working is with the perception of the kid. The magic occurs when we ask the correct questions, the specific questions, to take the students to reflect, to observe, to pay attention to something specific that we want that they pay attention to. And conception occurs with the previous knowledge that the student has. So what does he know about the topic? So we took the experiences that he already had in the future, in the past, and then connect what we are going to try he learns, so they can connect new ideas for the future. I'm going to give you this example that was very nice. It's very nice. For example, with a little kid, can you see the cat? Okay, hello everybody, I'm a little cat. When a little cat can see for the first time one cat, okay, one cat. He creates a conceptualization about an animal, and he say, it's a cat, meow meow. But then when we show another animal that is a dog, okay, when we show a dog, okay, he also thinks he has the concept of a cat, and he say, it's a cat. Then if we show a horse, for him it's also a cat, okay, for him it's also a cat. I don't know if you can see the horse. Oh, it's too big. Okay, maybe here. Okay, okay, here is the horse. And then we show another animal to the little kid that is a pig, and he also thinks it's a cat. And incredible, if we show an elephant, okay, an elephant, he still thinks that it's a cat. All of them are cats, okay. What we are going to work through is from the first possibility that the little kid has to think that all these animals are cats, we are going to take him to the reflective observation, to pay attention to the differences of these animals, especially with the sounds they do. For example, the difference between the meow of a cat or the bark of a dog, wow wow, etc., etc. So this is very important because we must have the capacity to understand how the student is creating the knowledge and understand how does he expresses his ideas.
Very, very interesting example, Maru. I love your experience again. One more time, I love your experience teaching children. It is hard, and my respect, really, 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 I respect all teachers who are right now teaching children and little kids. We have some questions. I don't know if you want to wait into the section part, or is it okay we read the questions right now?
Yes, it's okay to read questions.
One question from Kenya Perez says, do the experiential learning need to be shown in the planning? Is something that we as teachers had to plan actually?
Yes, of course, we can do in the planning. We can write the steps of the whole cycle in our planning. I can give you an example of this. Can you listen to this? Well, I have an example. How can we support the use of experiential learning in a planning lesson? And the example that I'm going to give you is when we are working with the students, the classification of plants. In the first step, do experience, concrete experience, what we are going to let the students is to listen to a video, okay? And then they are going to define the words related to classification of plants. After that, they are going to watch the video. So the first step is to listen to the video without seeing it. After that, they are going to watch the video. And then they are going to identify the plant's classification. To create the reflection process, what we are going to invite the kids or the student is to take photographs of different plants around the school, around their houses, and have these images to the class. And also, they are going to go to Google and find the explanation of what are the characteristics of these plants so they can categorize them. And to apply this, the learners can share what they have learned with the class. And so we write another column in our planning lesson when we work the experience, when we have the reflection experience, and we are applying the experience. What is the opinion of the teachers?
They love the planning because sometimes we have a specific formats, right? Specific formats from schools or lesson plans, templates, and we have to focus a little bit more on grammar, for example, or in vocabulary or functions or the communicative aspects. This is very clear, so we have another column in which we divide the content we're going to teach through the 4 stages and the different stages, activities that are related to every cycle. And this is very important question that I think is related right now. I don't know you want to answer because I understand that your expertise is more on children, but also you are a coach and you work with adults and young people. One question from Leslie is, what about an example of the cycle with teenagers?
Okay, with teenagers, I work with teenagers, the literature class. And for example, here that we are working, in this moment, we are working with poems. Before I give poems to the students, what I ask them is to them to find poems. The only thing that I do is to say, for example, for tomorrow, everybody is going to choose one poem that is related to love. So everybody brings their poems of love. So in the class, what they do is to work together in groups of 4 or 5 students, and they share the poems that they have. After this, what they do is to choose one of the poem, the one that they liked the most, and what they read to the class. So in the class, we have 6 or 5 or 6 readings of a poem, the most popular in each team. And after that, the group is going to decide which is the poem that they enjoy the most. This is some of the things that I do with the students of high school. And the next class, what they are going to do is to find a poem of a specific poet, for example, Gabriela Mistral, for example, William Shakespeare, etc., etc. So I give you a specific poet, and they are going to go through the poems of this author. And we do the same. At the end of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, what we have is plenty of poems that the students have listening to, reading to, enjoying with, feeling with, and at the end of the month, what they are going to create is a poetic magazine. And in teams also, they are going to choose how are they going to create their magazine of poetry. This
Very
is the
good.
example.
Thank you. Yeah, and remember, this is just a glance of the whole theory behind experiential learning. Actually, I had thought this workshop into sessions because the concepts are even so interesting, they are so deep. But believe me, when you get the idea behind experiential learning and you start planning using experiential learning, it changes the perspective of the way we teach. Do you agree, Maru?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. We have some questions. Let me see how I'm in the time. And maybe one or two questions because a lot of people is writing. They are very interested on the topic. One question that I found very interesting is about how to work with experiential learning if we need to finish a program or we need to finish a book. Is this something we have to do every single class, Maru?
No, we can choose this methodology, for example, for one class in the week. Okay, so according with the plan of the class that we have, the topics that we have to work with, maybe we can match some different topics to work experiential learning. I explained to myself, for example, the same example that I tell you about poetry. We were creating the ideas. So the last product is the magazine, is the most important, because here the students are going to work together and are going to have reflection time. They are going to think a lot of what they can do. They have to connect the different ideas they have. And also, at the same time, I'm working in the class on other topics about poetry. For example, I'm going to say in Spanish, nivel fonético o nivel lingüístico semántico de los poemas, o rima, o metasememas o metatropos, that I'm working with them with all the material that they already have. This is something that we choose a special moment where we can work this with the students. We can create also a debate, no, to work with the topics that we have in the plan.
All right, just to make it clear, it is to enrich, your program,
yes,
your book or your curriculum. I mean, what you're working with at the end is to enrich with different strategies. And this is also a comment from Sara Galvan that she says she's a new teacher. She's starting to teach. So for her, this is something new, and she's a little lost. At the end, we're going to give you references of pages and books you can read about it. Like I said, it is a vast topic, and we chose only one author. There are many different authors that talk about experiential learning, because this is something that has been long ago, something that has been happening long ago. But for language teachers, it is something new because we are working more with a communicative approach and focus more on vocabulary, focus a little bit more on making our students to talk. But there are a lot of research, a lot of information you can find out there. So at the end, we're gonna provide you with more authors, with more articles you can read. So Sarah, don't be afraid. We were there. We understand what is to be new. We understand how hard it is to find your teaching style. But this is something to enrich your teaching. And the last question, and then we move on because of time. It is about grammar. How do we teach grammar in the experiential learning cycle? You mentioned something about vocabulary and something about modals and past progressive. Also, we saw on the comments. You want to expand a little bit about grammar on experiential learning, Maru?
Yes, I think one opportunity to work with grammar is using puzzles. Okay, we create a vocabulary of subjects. We create some little cards about the grammar that we are explaining, for example, the simple present, and then we have a list of different verbs where we have the verb in simple present, in third person, in the verb as it is in infinitive, and then we have different SES, so the student can match when it's the third person, or can let it down when it's the pronoun I, you, we, where we don't it's not necessary to add the s in play, plays, runs, works, etc., where the kids can add the s to have the comprehension between the difference of the third person and the first person of the pronouns. And what we do is to create puzzles of different complements, with different complements, with subjects and with verbs, and with adding SES, so the students can match these ideas. And also, if it's easier if we also, for example, use the play cards, and with the play cards we paste the play card on the board, and then the student is going to create an idea about this play card using all the elements that they have to work with. This is the way we can work with grammar.
Very good. And one last question, because it's from Ana Yolanda. I think she's my student. So thank you, Ana Yolanda, for being here. One of the questions she has about experiential learning is, what about if we start with a question or a problem before the class, starting the class, and then we move on into the experiential learning? Is it a very good idea to start with a problem on the first stage?
Okay, if the problem takes the student to a concrete experience, it's an excellent idea. So we have to have the pedagogical intention of which questions are we doing to the student. So if we want to connect the start of the class with a question to connect the concrete experience, we must have very clear the ideas of what is the intention of the question.
Okay, very good. We have a lot of questions. I'm going to start posting them on the chat box. Also, feel free to answer one of the teachers if you think you have the experience, especially to new teachers, in order to enrich your participation in this workshop. So let's move on. Here we have, how do we transform the experience, right, Maru?
Yes, this is very nice. This is very nice because this is the magic of teaching. Okay, as I told you, the reflective observation depends on the teacher's ability, because we are the experts and we know what we really know the students learn. So what are we guiding the students to pay attention to by the observation? What do we need they observe? And with this, what they are going to do is to transform the information, because we are making them to reflect the differences between shapes. For example, we are teaching shapes in students, and this is very interesting because the little boys learn shapes since they are in kindergarten. Okay, they can differentiate a square from triangle, from circle, from rectangle. But what happened with this learning process while they are in third grade, for example? In third grade, they're still working with shape, with triangles, with rectangles, with squares, not with circles. Pay attention to this. But in third grade, they are going to learn to calculate perimeter. Okay, this is a new concept. And what are we going to pay attention to guide the students to pay attention which is the perimeter of one shape? Okay, they learn how to calculate perimeter, and then in fourth grade we still work with triangle, square, and the rectangle, but now they are going to learn polygons. Okay, this is a different shape. and they are going to calculate now the perimeter of another different shape, and in this moment in 4th grade, what we are going to do is teach the students not only to calculate perimeter, but also to calculate area, a new concept. How can we do this? Because in this moment, what we are doing is matching the reflective observation to transform the experience and pay attention to the differences between these different shapes, and also how to calculate the perimeter and now the area too. And we go through 6th grade when they are going to learn how to calculate volumes.
Okay, and referring to language teaching, it is the same, right? So maybe you can start with something basic, let's say the verb to be, and then you create an experience about who you are, I am, you, he, she is, and then you start going on a very more difficult topics, maybe later the present simple or probably the simple past, but always keeping in mind that that experience, it has to come with a reflection from a student, and then put it into an active experimentation, because that's what we end with the final purpose of languages, that outside the classroom they use it. That's how they actually experiment with the language, right?
Yes,
Maru?
and in this case, the cue are the time expressions. The cue are the time expression. This is what we need the student observe. And the changes in the verbs, this is what we need they pay attention to. So we write an idea, or not writing, because in a lesson, I think readings are good elements to work with them, no? So they can recognize where is the verb and where is the time expression, and how do they express this idea for themselves. For example, in the reading, the talks about planning a trip, and now to transform this to active experimentation, we ask the student, imagine that you are going to have a trip. Where do you want to go? What are you going to do? What part do you want to visit? Who are you going to go with? Why do you like to go there, etc., etc. So we create the atmosphere, and also very important, we create the possibility to the students to express their ideas, to communicate.
Yeah, and something that you are been asking to, it's also how can you adapt all the ideas that Maru gave us about the time expressions, about planning a trip. That's something you can do for kindergarten students, something you can do for elementary students, of course, at the level of English, right? At the needs they have regarding language, with teenagers, with adults. I have used also, probably most of you have done it, concrete experience with adults. I teach also companies on business sometimes. It's been a while since I haven't thought on a business class, but also you provide a concrete experience, and for adults and teenagers also, it is very meaningful. So you can plan a trip for all levels, you can have an experiment for all levels, you can take an approach for reading, take an approach for writing. So the idea is that they reflect on the language and then provide the experience, and at the end they experiment through writing, through speaking, through reading, through listening. That is a message we want to give you, and you can adapt it to all levels. Okay? Very good. So let's move on. What about this, Maru?
Okay, here we have the 4 steps, and the invitation is to reflect that the only way that we can do and create the atmosphere with the students. It's with praxis all the time, because it's as we want to learn how to ride a bicycle. No, it's impossible to ride it if we don't practice it. Yes, someone can explain us the steps of how to ride a bicycle, but if you don't ride it, you are not going to learn. So the practice is very important.
Also, you had an example about cooking.
Yes, of course, of cooking. No, for example, in cooking, I remember when I first learned how to cook rice. Oh, and it was terrible. It was terrible because, of course, the first time that I did it, it was awful. No, so by the practice and by the observation, I was questioning myself: do I have to need to add more water, less water? Do I have to turn on the fire or put it down? What is the specific cue to have a good rice meal? No, so it was through a practice, no, until I finally learned how to create a red rice, and then white rice, and then with carrots, with corn, etc., etc. So I was practicing, and I was observing also what was happening with the preparing of this meal.
That's right. Those are very practical examples. And I want to take your comment about biking and the bicycle. So I always tell my teachers, the teachers that I usually teach this workshop, this topic, it's about, imagine that you take the bike into the classroom, no? And you show the bike to children, the bicycle, you show them, and you tell them about the parts. You know, this is a wheel, and then probably you can show some theory about the balance or how physics works, about that you had to move faster in order to keep balance, and you just show that. But what about if you take the bike outside the classroom? I mean, they won't learn because they didn't actually ride on the bike and try to do it, and probably they're gonna fail. Probably they're gonna have mistakes, they're gonna make mistakes, and they're gonna try it again and try it again. So imagine if you take that bike outside and then you tell them, now you learn how to bike. It happens the same with languages. You can give them, I mean, it's hard or for them to learn if we just give them the grammar and vocabulary and all the things that are in our program. You are showing the bicycle, but at the end, if you don't give them time to practice, you are taking the bicycle outside the classroom and you are telling them that they speak English right now because they just saw the board. So practice is very important, especially for us language teachers. We had to allow students to get on the bike, try to bike, ask them to fail, ask them to fall, ask them to try again, ask them to do it until they make it. That's the only way we can do it. So I think it happens the same with cooking. You say it. So imagine language class as that class of taking the bicycle in your classroom. And then we understand a little bit how important is to create the experience, but after the reflection, after the experimentation, they have to try, and they have to take that knowledge outside the classroom. Right, Maru?
Yes, of course. And here, especially the teachers of a language must be very patient. I give an example to my students that the language is a process. And when a little kid of 6-year-old comes to the class, and I'm going to say this in Spanish, and they say to you, oh, Miss, mañana fui al circo. What you are going to do is to model the correct expression of the kid, and you say to him, oh, ayer fuiste al circo. Yes, miss. Mañana fui al circo. And we continue modeling. Modeling is very important to the student. So we don't say you have a mistake. What we do is to give the student to listen again. How is he going to say it correctly? So we must be very patient and give the students the opportunity to pay attention, to reflect what are the changes that we are doing until he catches and he can say it.
Very good. Okay, so let's move on because we have about 20 minutes, and there are other concepts here that we had to talk about. We continue talking about the learning cycle process, because remember, this is called learning cycle, right? What about impression and expression, Maru?
Yes, it's the same ideas that we were talking about, no? We must create an impression on the kid, and he gets some ideas, the student gets some ideas. Imagine that we are teaching history, okay? And we are going to talk about independence. And the students are thinking about independence, and they are thinking, what is independence? What did it happen? What did it happen? When did it happen? Okay, so we create an impression of them. We make them observe the characteristics of the independence event, and then we promote the expression of the ideas about independence. No, so after that we connect with the active experimentation to their own lives. Do you need independence? What do you need to independ of? Do you feel like a slave? That's interesting, no? Because we move from the history topic to their real lives and what is happening to them, no? To also touch the social emotional being, state of being of the student.
That's right. And then we have another idea, right? A little bit about simulations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talking about simulations, we are going to create the idea to the student to be working with learners interaction, okay? So we give some verbal commands and let them and provoke as a teachers the interaction with the students, no? And also is get some ideas of the physical task. What are they thinking? How are they thinking? What are they creating from the concrete experience? If we ask a student that never visited the beach, it's going to give you a different concrete experience from the ones that had visited the beach, no?
Yeah,
And we
that's
can
true.
listen to them, no?
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. Yeah, we had to know our audience.
Yes.
All right, what about the next idea? Learners move through the simulation, creating new approaches and models based on past concrete experiences. What you mentioned, right? If he doesn't know
Yes.
the beach, or he doesn't know, or he never seen a bike, it will be hard for him to understand what we're trying to explain.
Yes, of course. No. There is one important thing that sometimes says George Berkeley, and George Berkeley said the only thing that I can talk about are the things that I can see. If I don't see them, I can explain about that. This is very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Very good. Then we have another idea, the red box, no, the box on red color. It says learners apply these new understandings to future concrete experiences as they repeat the simulation. That will be learning, right? Repeating the experience in real life.
Yes, exactly. This is when they can take the learning experience out of the classroom and they apply in their own lives, or they can talk about what they have learned and they can explain in their own words and they can express their ideas of what they have learned.
Very interesting. Okay, we're heading through the end of the talk. We have a couple of questions. Meantime, if you have more questions about this topic, please feel free to ask. So Daniela asks, concrete experience is the same as previous knowledge?
It's an excellent question. It can be connected with different ideas of two different authors. This is calls experiential learning, and the other is significative learning from David Auswell. No, David Auswell talks to us about the previous knowledge, and the difference between these is that we can connect or disconnect both ideas according with the necessities that we have in the classroom. Are we trying to connect to create a significative learning, or or to connect with the experiential learning that are they are two different theories and gives different ideas.
Yeah, and sometimes you can use that prior knowledge or that previous knowledge to create the concrete experience. Sometimes it's not very necessary, but you had to diagnose and to see what your students know about the topic or the experience you're going to offer. As you mentioned about the beach or the bike, if they're not familiar to it, we had to investigate a little bit more, so in order to help them when we create the experience.
Yes.
We have another question about frustration. It says, Susana from Chile, how can we avoid students feel frustrated when they believe they are doing well during the process of praxis? So what about frustration on the students on the praxis process, Maru?
Well, it's something that is going to happen, but the teachers emphasis in the good things that the students do is going to create a environment, a safety environment, and is going to motivate to the students. No, we can say it was excellent. Okay, can you repeat in this way? Never, how can I say? Never say that something that the student says is foolish. No, all that the student says is created by his own ideas, and we need to be very kind with that. No.
Also, I want to say something about this. There is an author, which is Stephen Krashen. Stephen Krashen, it's a researcher, and he developed 5 hypotheses about second language acquisition. And one of the hypotheses he talked about is the affective filter. So how we, as teachers, we had to lower the affective filter on the students in order to work with emotions. So, right, so that affective filter, when it's too high, it blocks learning. So because we are like very close to our emotions and preconceptions about a concept or a content we have. So what Krashen says, that we have to work with that affective filter to get it lower in order to get there to acquisition. So you can research a little bit about more. Is Stephen Krashen. I'm going to write it on the chat. So he developed 5 hypotheses for second language acquisition, and that particular you are referring to frustration is the affective filter hypothesis. And one very nice question, Maru, it's the definition of praxis. Another word for praxis
is doing, acting, experience, no, to work with the things that we are learning, no?
Like practice, the practice?
To act, no? To act. It's the same example that we were talking about the bicycle, no? If you want to learn how to ride a bike, ride it and try it, no?
Very good. So that's the question. That's the answer for the praxis question. Another comment and question from Claudia says, how do you use your teaching time to cover all the school's expectation and at the same time to use experiential learning? We talked about before a little bit about this, about how to cover the book. I don't know if you want to say it again, about using experiential learning in every single class or to cover all the program.
Yes, we need to have a balance, no? To have a balance in our practical teaching. And there is no formula. Every one of us must listen to the environment in our class. How is it functioning? What doesn't function? And what are the strategies that we are going to do, to choose, to plan, to make it function?
That's right. Daniela says, why, I think she's summarizing, and that's very good because we're heading into conclusions. Why I understand is that the first step is to create a concrete experience or knowledge. It's like introducing the topic. The second stage, we teach the topic. The third stage, we apply a task. And the last stage is the action. Is it right?
Yes, of course. What she has done is to follow his own experiential learning style.
That's right. She's talking about her experience. But yeah, it is the knowledge, the concrete knowledge is what you're going to use in the classroom, and then you create an experience. And then the reflection is like you teaching the topic, you're right, like making aware the students. In the case of languages, is the meta language. So meta language is when we are aware, we're learning a second language and how what the features of the language that are involved. And then on the third stage of, yes, is the concepts the students are learning is like through a task. It could be through a task. And finally, the fourth stage, as you mentioned, is action in real life. Correct. So Daniela, you gotta start. You summarize the whole talk on very simple words. We have time for the last question. Let me see. I lost it a little bit. What about grammar? What do you say, Maru, to students who say grammar is not necessary?
Oh, this is a very important question. I think grammar is the base of a language. It's not the same to speak Japanese, to speak Chinese, or to speak French, or to speak Spanish than to speak English. So each language has its own rules, and it's important because with these rules, the language was created for. No, so this is important, of course. But not grammar as repeating, no? Repeating. So the use of grammar must be feeling by the students in different strategies that the teacher uses in the classroom, no? Creating concrete experiences by a question, by a reading, by a poster, with flashcards, etc., etc. So we are taking the students the way through his own learning.
Very good, very good. We have lots and lots of comments that say thank you, they say congratulations, they have questions, they have, they are sharing experiences through their own teaching. I'm going to talk with Maru, and probably we can plan a second part of this workshop, because experiential learning is like I said, very deep, vast, a lot of information, a lot of ideas to process. There were a couple of slides that we couldn't share with you. We are going to plan maybe a second part. Maru, what do you think of this experiential learning?
Yes, of course, it's a fascinating topic.
And maybe be a little bit less theoretical and to provide
more practical
strategies in the classroom, more
yes.
practical, because there were some questions about how we, if we have or we can share a class, like a demo class for teachers using experiential learning. So we're gonna work it out. We are planning more workshops, but before I talk about that, please, on the screen there is a survey for us. I mean, for you to answer, because for us it's very important your opinion about this workshop. So the speaker was Maria Eugenia Olague Torres. She was the expert. I was just moderating. I was just asking questions and directing the talk. She's an expert. She has a lot of experience teaching children, and also she works at university in Guanajuato in Mexico. But she's the expert, right? That's the survey, experiential learning. That's a UDP workshop. Please take a moment to do it, because for us it is important to improve every day. So we're going to plan a second part of experiential learning. Another announcement that I have is to join us for the next workshops. We have workshops in Spanish at 11 Mexico time, and then we have another workshops in English 12:30 at noon, I mean, in Mexico time. So all the information is on Facebook, all the information is on our social nets, on social media. You can get through it. Tomorrow in English, we're gonna talk about coaching, which is very interesting, because another role of a teacher. I mean, we are teachers, we are facilitators, we are coaches, we are sometimes doctors, psychologists, and tomorrow we're gonna talk about a very interesting role in a teacher, which is coach, to be a coach and coaching in the classroom. So that's for tomorrow. On Thursday and Friday, we won't have workshops until next week. We're gonna start again every day at the same time, starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through Thursday. So we are very honored, and it's a privilege to have you here with us. And join us through these workshops, because we do it, we love. We understand that education moves all the world, and through these difficult times, teachers, we have a huge responsibility, and the best way to take responsibility for is to learn and to share experiences. Maru, your final words, it could be in English and Spanish. What do you want to say to all the audience?
It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us in this space of learning as a teacher. We always are learners. Thank you. Have an excellent day.
Thank you all. Be safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.